Hi everyone and welcome to this being the 6th floristry class, and there's a whole heap of notes. I've spent a lot of time on today's lesson and it's all about making a fully wired bouquet, and I thought that because it was my spring, the best time for me to start would be right now, because the first of spring to me is the first of all of the seasons, and I have gathered together here as many spring flowers as I could find, and I've put them in the order of which we're going to use them. And let me just go through what we're going to be using today so that you've got a grip of what we're going to do. Right, so I've got some lambsia over here, I've got camellia leaves, which these dark ones over here, which we're going to use as our base. Now the reason I'm using those is because they're really strong, sturdy leaves, and because we're going to be wiring all of these beautiful spring flowers, which I might just add and point out, when I look at things like this and the delicacy of the little petals, the best way to tell you about how to handle these is if you were going to be wiring butterfly wings, because they're all very, very dainty and delicate in their composition. So I've got some Pieris over here, and that'll be the third thing that we put in because that's a droopy thing, but I'll get into that in due course. I've got tulips here. Some of the tulips I've left in the wrapping, mainly because I know that that's going to keep them all upright, because these I've just unravelled, and with the lights today they're all sort of starting to droop down. I've got these little fine petite little daffodils with the bigger daffodils, and they're all just sort of starting to open, which is perfect when you're selecting your flowers. I've got Freesias that I've gathered from my garden, plus some that I have purchased, right through to the Matchsticks, the little blue Matchsticks. I've got some Daphne over here, which smells absolutely divine. I've also got a Hyacinth, so that's sort of like quite dominant. I've also gone down to some lovely little violets, which are just through here. And I've got a hellebore, and then I've got some stock, and I've got some irises. So everything I've selected all has different methods of wiring, and also it has different, there are different ways of which you handle them, plus also how you're going to put them into the bouquet. And we're going to go right through. I've also got some wire and the tape down here. These are the tools that we're going to be looking at today. So I've got the wire here, and the wire I've selected is 22, 24 and 26. So the 24 is the heavier wire right through to the 26, which is the finest wire. I've got some sharp scissors. Now I've had questions from some of you asking, why don't I use a knife? Look, it's just what you get used to. I prefer to use the clippers or the scissors because that's how what I started using when I first started. Plus I've got some different tape. So I've got some green tape, which we're going to mostly use for our binding, and I've also got some white, two types, but I'll talk about those in due course. So also we've got the water mister, because that is going to be important. Plus I've also got right down over in the front here, I've got some wet cotton wool, which we're going to use to moss or to put some moisture around each of our flowers as we wire them, to try and keep them as fresh and to get them to last as long as we can. I'll also go into the other types of bouquets before we start, but give me a moment to strike all of this, and we will start with the wiring of our base and putting the filling foliage in, which is going to be the Pelargonium. It has a beautiful smell and it's a light texture, and with the dark and the light and with the lambsia, we're going to have a really lovely combination and a nice base on which to rest all of our flowers. So I'll be back in just a moment, so go and get a coffee and I'll see you soon. Okay, I've cleared the decks, and in front of me I've got 3 different types of bouquets. Now everything here is artificial, and I've done this on purpose so that I can keep coming back to these as we progress along the lessons. Now the first bouquet I want to show you is what I call an informal hound. Well, it's a little bit informal, but it is informal, and this is as if I've just gone to the garden and picked the flowers and then bound them with a bit of ribbon. A lot of brides prefer this type of bouquet. These bouquets are great for certain times and of the year or season. the reason why we're going to do the wired bouquet today is I could go to the garden and I could just pick all of the daffodils and bring them together, but look how thick the stems are, and you'll also notice when you turn them over, not only are they quite, they're squishy. I call them my squishy stems. And the problem with these is not only what you'll find is that they'll emit like a gluey, sort of a fluidy substance. Over the years, what I've discovered is a lot of girls or people carrying the bouquets can actually have a skin sensitivity or an allergy to that gooey substance that comes out of there. Not only that, that will stain, but also when you look at all of those stems, even to bind those, I'm going to have to be really careful because I'll squish them, because not only are their little petals nice and delicate, the stems are also delicate. So to get a firm grip on that, to make it nice and firm, I find quite difficult. And to be perfectly honest, I think that the time involved in wiring is going to be much, much better for you to have control over the flowers, and also to remove that big bulk there, because by the time, and I'm just looking at the flowers behind me, you know, by the time I put the stock and the daffodils and the irises and the tulips, the stem's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And even though the flowers are quite light, it's still going to be a big, hunky, sort of bulky handle that isn't going to be pleasant for a bride to carry. So that's the handheld, and we will get into doing those in due course. They are loose and they are informal, and they are supposed to be, to give the impression as if you've just gone to the garden and just picked them. If this is what the bride wants, then, you know, it's okay to do, you know, just do what the bride wants, but I would talk them into, especially with spring flowers, for it to be wide. So that's one particular one. This is the other type of design that you'll sometimes come across, and this has been done into a lady holder, and it's actually got the moss, not the moss, the foam at the top. Now this, you just soak that in water, and it soaks up to like 10 times its own weight in moisture. It's very nice to use for roses and dahlias and things that have got a nice heavy stem, but trying to get something like this into that, I've found over the years, is quite difficult, and it's hard to keep the flowers in there. Even when you wire them, they will still fall out. So wiring and mossing and taping is still the best way to go. So that's that type of bouquet, and this is starting off with the little handheld. It's, as I said, it's just as if you went to the garden, picked it and then bound them, but the firmer the stems, the better they are. And I actually don't understand what nature was doing by giving that such a big stem, but then it needs that big stem to hold that flower up, doesn't it? Okay, so that's all about the different types of bouquets, and, well, some of them. But anyway, let's just get started. Give me a moment to get rid of these, and then we'll get into the leaves and we'll start doing the back. Okay, ready to go with the back. Now, as I said, I'm going to use Camellia leaves. Because they are such strong leaves, these are going to be the perfect base to form my foundations. And I'm actually going to start from the base, and we're going to work up to the top. Now, I've shown you in earlier lessons how to do the wiring of the leaves. With today's lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire them with the wire through that main vein there, so that I've only got the tiniest little bit of wire showing on the other side. Now, the wire I'm using is a 22 gauge, because as I said, this is going to be my foundation, and it has to be really nice and firm. So it's just a matter of going either side of that main vein. The other great thing is that this wire has already been coated, so it's not going to rust, but the wire is just a mechanism in which to hold the flowers and the leaf, and to give me the ability to maneuver and manipulate it to the way I want to go. And there's only going to be the finest little bit of wire showing through that side. Now, because this is going to be the base, and you need to make sure that all of your leaves are as in pristine condition as possible. So pushing that through the main leaf there, or vein, and then bringing that down, holding it with your thumb like so. I've only got a little bit of a stem there, and by putting the wire onto that, I've now got some control over what I want to do. I've only got a little bit of wire there, as I said, but I can still bend and manipulate that leaf to go the way that I want to. Now, in the back, in the notes, I've actually given you a rough guide on what you use first to do your construction. So basically it's all the leaves, and for the bouquet, the other thing to remember is the size of the leaves is going to determine how big your collar or base structure is going to be. So once you've got to that stage, it's just a matter, and all of your leaves have been wired, and I've actually allowed for this bouquet about 8 leaves. So I also need to tape, as I said in earlier lessons, I like to tape everything as I go. Even though the wire has been coated, I still want to make sure that I'm not going to get any rust, because don't forget, these are fresh flowers and there will be excess water onto them. So once you've done that, it's just a matter of binding your tape and bringing that down about a good couple of centimetres. The other reason why I like to do this is because, and I'll just wire this one here too, because when I tape, it actually means that I've got another a sticky substance in which to go on to the next stage. So make sure all of your leaves are around about the same size, because it is going to be a round, wide bouquet. So if you get your round base to start with, then you're not going to have to worry about any kind of visual balance, because they're all the same to start with. So getting all of your, and if you've got a leaf that's a bit like that, even though I've wired it, it's still bendy. If it's going to be bendy like that, just discard it at this stage, because you're going to have issues further along, because once you put the flowers onto that, it's still going to bend. So make sure all your leaves are in pristine condition and they're all nice and flat before you start. Right, I've got a whole heap in front of me here, and it's just a matter of getting your 8 leaves, and they don't have to be perfect, because nothing in nature is perfect. So how many have I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll use that one, 8. Now bring them all in together like so, and then get another wire, and at this stage I'm going to use a 26 wire, and where all of those stems all come together, I'm going to put a piece of wire there and then go up a bit, and then very, very firmly pull that wire, that little guide wire there, push that down out of the way, and then you'll be left with this big wire that's going out on its own. Right, from there, and also as I said, that when I bound that plastic all sort of helps to stick onto itself. And now it's just a matter of bringing all of your leaves out like so, all flat, to form a nice collar, and make sure that all the leaves are coming back down on themselves and they're not crossing over. They need to all sit as they went in, nice and flat. Now, if there's still a bit of a space between, when I look into that, I can see I've got a little bit more of I've got a space, that bit there is longer than that, and because I've done, what's now happening is I've got this lovely ring of leaves here, and that is sticking out just a little bit further. Now by using that wire, even though that's still quite firm, I actually can take it out, position it, using the guide wire. I can then retighten that to make sure that everything is all about the same level of nice and flatness. Now then what I like to do is to put it down on the surface like so, pull those up, and don't be mingy or skimpy with the length of your wire. The longer that is, the better it's going to be at this stage. You can always cut it, but you can't add on to it. Now the other thing I wanted to say to you, and I think that this is a really interesting thing, I've just wired 8 leaves, and that is the thickness of my stem so far. Now I'll just go left or right ever so slightly to go back to show you, if you were doing a handheld posy using all of those flowers, look how thick that stem is and how bulky that is. And you know, I work with my hands, so I'm okay when it comes to holding big heavy things or big thick things, because that muscle in there over the years has been conditioned and worked so that it is strong. But if you've got a bride and she's not used to holding something really, really thick and heavy, that there will be tiring at the end of the day, whereas that stem is still quite fine and I've still got a long way to go, but I've eliminated so much excess in bulk just by doing this at this stage and creating this nice thin handle. Now, the next thing that you need to be looking at is, and this is what I like to do, I like to have a bottle on hand to place my bouquet. Now, I'll leave you for a moment to just have a think about what we've just done, and then I'm going to get on to the next lot of foliage and we're going to start putting in our base foliages. Right, the base is done. Now we go to, which is going to, as I said, forming that really lovely collar. The next thing is to put the Pelargonium in, or Pelargonium, which is actually going to be our lovely filling foliage. Now, to work with this, let me get my scissors and strike that out of the road. What I like to do is to everything's sort of got to be around about the same length. And when I see that leaf, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of like estimate or guesstimate how long it's got to be. So those little points of my leaves are actually my furthest point. So everything from there on in needs to be about just a little bit smaller than those exterior leaves. Now putting that down there. So the next thing to do is to go through and to pick or snip all my foliage to round about the same length. Now I've got 6 around the outside, so hopefully 6 will be as many as I need. Now I like to wire every single thing before I start, but for today's lesson I thought it would be really good idea if I do this in real time so that you can follow me. Now some may be thinking, oh, this is a bit old-fashioned, but I still maintain that the old ways of doing things, it's like learning the piano. You have to do your scales. This is exactly the same. It's those rudimentary things that you need to do all the way through your designing. And even the best designers, when you think of like the Karl Lagerfelds or the Jean-Paul Gaultiers, they went to school to learn basic design, and this is exactly the same principles. It's those basic principles or fundamentals that will build on your design skills. Right, from there, now for this I'm going to use a 24 gauge, I'm going to use 22 again. So there's my stem, any little bit like that, if you think it's going to be in the road, just pull those bits off now. Then getting your wire and sticking your wire through where you've got that little bit there. See where you've got the main stem and you've got that leaf coming off? It's just a matter of putting it into there, bringing that down like so. You can either wire that around like that, or if you feel that you've got enough support just with that main wire up there, just leave it as it is, because sometimes the less amount of twisting onto a stem like this, and the great thing about the stem of the Pelargonium is that it's quite fibrous and it's quite firm. Also, if you're worried about whether it's going to wilt, just pick it and leave it and see how long it is before it starts to wilt and like a lettuce leaf. Right, from there, to do your taping, what I like to do is to put my hand on either side of that wire like so, and then putting the tape on, then just twist and pull and bind as you move down the stem to seal that little cut bit that you've got in there. So if that's sealed, the moisture will be retained and the leaf will last much longer. Okay, and you only need to go down a couple of centimetres. And I think the other thing I need to say to you too is that this on its own doesn't weigh very much, but if you're using nearly a whole roll of tape on a bouquet, which I hope you wouldn't, but depending on how big your bouquet is, that's actually quite weighty. So by wiring, not only can we manipulate and place the stems, we can also eliminate, don't forget, as I said before, we can eliminate as much bulk as we can. Okay, give me a moment and I will insert those into the bouquet on top of the leaf so that you can see the next process. Oh, I had to have a wet coffee just to wet my whistle. Okay, dry hands, picking up your bouquet. It's now a process of where you've got all those little areas there between the leaves. It's a matter of placing your pelargonium in between the leaves. Oh, I can hardly see, hold on. And it's just, from now on, it's just like a paint by numbers. I love this process. Right, placing that into there and making sure that that stem, I'll bring it over to you. See that stem there? It goes right into that stem and push it down as you go. Here's going into that next one. That goes into there like so, and push that out like that. Turn it around, go in between the next two leaves, press that down, getting another one, going between the leaves, pressing that down. And when you're placing them, make sure that it's turning the right way. If I press that way, it's actually the underneath side. Can you see that there? That's the underneath side of the leaf. I actually want that to be so that I've got ruffle from the outside moving into the center, pulling that down like so, going in between the next lot, placing that to go into there, another lot in between those leaves, like so, and taking that around to there. And then once that's all, the whole area has been filled, and I've used 2, 4, 6, 7 bits. I think I want to put one more bit in, and I'm going to put that into there so that I've got a nice even number. And I think that that's also another really good thing to remember. It is a round design that we're creating, so if you get stuck, just work in even numbers. Right from there, once you've got all of those stems and that foliage inserted, getting your guide wire again and then just twisting that around and pulling that quite firmly right at the top. Now you might not be able to see that, in fact you probably don't, but where all of my binding is happening with that guide wire is all at that same point. So that, and using, as I said before, with the tape, the plastic and the tape, the wire actually digs into that to make it nice and firm. Right, so there we have our nice base, and the pelargonium is quite a nice form to use because it's going to form a really lovely little text, a lovely sort of layer for our flowers to rest on. Right, from there, the next thing to get involved with, I'll just strike those, is I'm going to use this lily of the valley tree, or the Pieris. Now this is a really lovely, I call this a filler foliage. It's got lovely leaf on it. It's also got these lovely little boughs of flowers. Now I'm putting these in now because when they grow naturally, they hang down. So to get a little bit of softening to the base of my bouquet, I'm going to put those in now so that they gently droop down. Now, I could possibly have used those on their own, but when you look at these, hold on, I'll just pull one out. In fact, I'll snip that off. When you see, it's got a really lovely, hard, firm stem, but those little boughs in there are quite fine, and if they're sort of like almost, I call them almost ripe, or at the flush of their bloom, they can fall off. And with that being held and carried by a bride or a bridesmaid, that being put up and down or touching it across an outfit or the fabric of a frock, those little boughs can fall off. So they're quite dainty, even though that stem's quite strong, they're still a dainty form. So with the camellia leaves, what that will do is it'll give it a nice structure in which to sit on. Now, to wire these, It's just a matter of going in and, as I said, cutting everything to about the same stem length. And I already know that they're going to be the same stem length because I've got this foliage here. So that's sort of going to be my guide. More or less is okay, as long as everything is sort of like similar in length. Here's another one here, take that off. And I used 6 or 8 bits of Pelargonium around the outside. I may, because this is a little bit smaller, need less. Now I want to, we'll just have a wee break for a minute, because now I want to show you how you can get rid of, instead of using a lot of little stems, how you can wire more together and only use one wire. Okay, wiring the Pieris or the lily of the valley. It's just a matter of doing exactly what we did with the Pelargonium and then going through up the stem and then going through a couple of the leaves, and usually that's the strongest part of the leaf where it joins onto that stem. In saying that, not necessarily like rock solid, but normally there's a little bit more strength just into there. So pushing that through like so, once again, bringing that over, holding it with your left hand and then gently just wiring and binding the wire onto the leaf. The great thing about these stems is they are really strong, so you can really get in there and give it a good wire. Now, as I said before I left you for a moment, you can do everything singly, but if you wanted to cheat the whole process, what you can sometimes do is to bring 2 together like so, just like bring that into there, just nestle it in like so, getting your wire, and then it's exactly the same process of bringing the wire through there and bringing that wire along. And look now what I can do. And you're probably all thinking, why am I wasting my time just wiring those in? The thing about spring flowers, some of the stems are big, some of the stems are small, and bringing those all into a posy can be quite difficult. That's why I like to do what I'm doing here. Right, from there it's just a matter of binding again with the tape, and because that's so heavy, as you're doing it, just make sure that you don't be too rough, because we don't want any little bells or little flower blooms to come off. So that can go down there, and then I'll just do that one there. And we've looked at this a lot of times, so I don't think I need to go over this again with you, do I? No, I don't, because you're all very clever. Okay, now picking up your bouquet again, all of the Pieris has been wired, and it's just a matter of how many bits have I got? 2, 4, 6 bits. And the other thing I haven't told you is that when you're wiring, to keep 1 or 2 pieces to one side so that we can bring what's happening on the outside back into the inside of our posy. Right, I've got a big heavy bit there. Let's bring that, oops. Oh, it's quite heavy, this stuff too, so it is very, very heavy. It is heavy, and I could possibly have used a bigger wire, but because I've got this lovely structure around the base with those leaves, I've got something solid of which the flowers can rest on. Right, I've put that big heavy clump there, so I'm going to get another piece that is equally the equal visual balance or size, and bring that over and into the other side like so. And I'm just sort of moving a little bit further away from that central area there, so that that and that are sort of as even as I can get them. And I've just noticed a couple of little bits of, oops, dead bits that I don't want into there. Okay, bring that down like so, get another 2 pieces. Now, even though I said I used 8 stems around, 8 camellia leaves around the bottom this time, and then I used 8 on the top, but because that's such a big visual amount, I'm only going to need 4 bits. So I can't say to you 8 of this, 8 of this and 8 of this, because it will depend on the size of which you're using. Now you might be thinking, oh my goodness, it's getting harder and harder and harder to see where I'm going, but because it's just the finest little wire, I can just go in between, and that's pretty much what you're going to be doing. It's just going in between those leaves and then bringing that through and taking it to the other side, and also make sure that they are all falling the same way. Right, they all come down to there, and when I look into it, I can see that's balance, all through there is balance, that's balance, but I've got a little bit of a void there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in one more, take that down and into there, so that I fill that little void now. And it's easier to do it now than to wait until the end. And what I'm trying to do is to teach you how, once you get into it, you don't have to stop and start, even though I'm doing that today. Now the other thing is, when I turn that around the other side, they should all be coming through those little gaps, all in and amongst there. So you might think you don't have enough room, but in actual fact you do. And it's easy, as I said, it's easy to get a fine wire through there than big stems. Okay, so bring that up to there, getting your guide wire again, and then just bringing that guide wire around, always on top of itself, like so, and giving that a big yank. About now, I've decided that all of this wire is actually surplus to my requirement, and it's starting to get in the road. So what I like to do is, where's a little bit of wire, get that and just tape that around there like that, because I'm not wasting that wire, and I'm just going to cut that surplus off to there so that I've got a handle that's easy to use. Don't cut this too short at this stage, because it's too hard to add to it. So there we have a really lovely base, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep a piece of that to put into the middle. Put that back into there, and there we have, that's a really lovely base in which to put our other fine delicate flowers in. Right, from there the next thing to look at is of our flowers. Now I've got stock, hold on, let me just bring these over because we're up to this stage now. Right, I've got you need to know how things grow. Stock grows up. So when it comes to placing it, I know that that's going to be into the middle section. I've got irises, and irises come straight out of the ground. So they're going to be my top flowers. I've also got tulips, and if you know about tulips growing, when they are on the bulb in the ground, they will always grow up unless there's been a big storm and they've been knocked over. But these have a tendency to droop. So when it comes to designing with them, I think about what I've got, and I think, okay, well, the daffodils always have their little heads down. These are going to naturally drop. The freesias are going to sit up. So, okay, what have I got? I've got those that sit up, I've got those that droop down. They are definitely going to droop down. They grow upright or vertical, so they need to go vertically into the top of the design, as do the irises. So, the best way forward is to start with that which is going to droop, and I'm going to place those now. So just give me a minute to strike this, and then we'll be back into it. Okay, now before I go on to the tulips, I've got this beautiful lamb's ear. Now, this is when sometimes I get a little bit cheaty. Mine isn't ready in the garden yet, but this artificial one is a really beautiful colour. And it's almost as realistic. I'm going to just put a few pieces of this into here just to diffuse my weight. But as I do that, what I'm thinking, really, is that a good idea when I've got to put the tulips in? So because this is a down-up construction, I have to really think about what I'm going to use and when I'm going to place it. Personally, I would like to place that into there right now, but, and I'll just take that out, When I think of these tulips that I've got to place, they are really, really delicate. And when I talk about butterfly wings, they are butterfly wings, and I know that they could become bruised quite easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put aside the lamb's ear, and I'm going to use the tulips now and then come back to that in due course. Right, looking at the tulips, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off like so, and then getting the wire. Now, this is the next issue that I'm going to have. Am I going to use a 22 gauge wire because it's firmer, or am I going to use a fine one like a 24 or a 26? I'm going to just demonstrate what I now need to sort of factor into my equation for my construction, because what is going to be the best wire to, number one, support the flower in the bouquet, but also give me the ability to manipulate that flower. Now, this is how I like to wire the flowers, a daffodil, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to stick that 26 wire, is it 26? Yeah, that 26 wire right through the middle section, or halfway through. Take the wire right through and then bring that down like so. Now, to test that that wire is going to be the right weight, all I have to do is that, and if it holds, I know that that's going to be the perfect weight of wire to hold that flower. It is a little bit droopy, but so far so good. I think that that's going to be the best weight for me to use. So I'm going to gently put that down there, and I'm going to do it with the other one. Now, you don't really need that much stem, but for me to be able to demonstrate, I think it's perfect for me. Now, when you're pushing that through, just apply enough pressure so that your finger or your thumb is only just putting a little bit of pressure on the little fine delicacy of those petals. Then once you get to there, bring that down, and I'm just going to do one more test, and look, that's a perfect weight. The other thing, by using the lighter wire, it means that I'm going to have less weight in my finished posy. Now, to wire these, or to tape these, it's just a matter of going to that main wire on that side, or the shorter wire, placing it there, and then putting my hand on the finger on the other side, giving that a bit of a tug out, and then just twisting that down and round the stem. Now, these stems are quite squishy, not as squishy as the texture or the fibrous texture of a daffodil, but not quite. You still have to be a little bit careful, because I don't want to damage that in any way. The other issue I've got is, because it's quite thick and I'm coming down to 2 wires, you might just have to allow a little bit of a lap over so that you can get that back onto itself like so. Okay, so that one there is done, and I could moss these if I wanted to, but I don't think that they need to be mossed because they're fresh. And normally, if I was doing a bouquet like this, I don't do it on the morning of the wedding. I do it the night before, and I'll show you how to condition your flowers and how to keep them so that if you don't need to moss, and can get away with it, that's the best way to get away with it. And I also think it's an experience thing too, and it also will have to do with your climate and the atmosphere and just how warm it is at wherever you're constructing or making or designing your bouquet. Usually spring is still cool, it's not like the heat of summer. Right, from there, let's put these flowers in. I've got 5 white and I've got 5 yellow, and it's just a matter of going into there again. And the other thing I keep forgetting to tell you is that when I'm taping, I only tape down a couple of centimeters, because as I start to push these flowers into here, I need to know that when I find that little hole, when I pull that wire down, if there's excess tape, it actually gets stuck through the leaves and through the stem, and if that happens you'll find that it's quite difficult to pull it through. Now I'm going to go one into one side and one onto the other side, and I'm trying to keep these the same length, but it's just going to be a gauge, a visual gauge for, so if you're going to position that so that it's in say 3 inches, make sure it's 3 inches on the other side. With this I'm going to I'll put this one into here. Hold on just a minute. Teeth or mouth comes in quite handy about here. Put that down into there like so. And everything that I do today is going to be balanced. And if you get stuck, just go and have a look on my Fundamentals of Floristry, which is on my YouTube channel, and that'll give you a bit of an understanding of visual weight, but we will cover that in due course. Okay, so it's like I've got an imaginary line running through the centre. What I've done on that side, I've done on this side. What I've done on that side, I've repeated on the other side. And I want to have the weights of my flowers evenly distributed for this type of design that we're creating today. So putting a yellow one into there, then doing exactly the same on the other side. Still holding everything on my hand, making sure that they are placed so that I'm still keeping to that circle. That one there is about the same size. Bring that down to put on top of that, and then I'm going to bring this one through to this side. And as I said, that wire has to be strong enough to support that flower. And when I put that on there, it's a little bit higher than that side. So just take that through and nestle that over there like so, so that there is sort of like equal balance as you've gone around. Right, from there it's a matter of getting your guide wire and then just twisting that around like so, so that all the plastic sticks together. And what I'm going to do now is, because I've only got that little bit of wire there, I'm just going to tack that wire down into there. Now you'll notice that I haven't twisted anything. The reason I've done that is twisting will make that stem much thicker. So if you remember not to do any twisting at this stage, you're going to be left with this really lovely fine stem. And when you think about the amount of flowers that are in here, oops, what's happened? That's moved. We don't want that to move. The amount of flowers in there, I've only got that much stem. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut that now so that they are all about the same length, so that that's not getting into my road as I'm constructing. Right, that can go into there like so, and I'm going to keep those two tulips because might just want to position those into the top of my bouquet. Right, from there, let's just ditch that. And it's a matter of, we've put the bigger flowers around the bottom. That's the other thing I forgot to tell you. The tulips are quite heavy. That's why I've put those around the base. The white is quite a heavy colour, as is the yellow, because that's a primary colour. So now what I've got to do is I've got to disperse those big yellow bits with the flowers that I've got over here. So I've got daffodils that we can start looking at, and the other thing I've got is the irises. And I love, if you're ever stuck and wanting to know, which flowers to use, nature is the most amazing colorist. We've got the yellow and the white here. And when I look into that lovely iris, it's got the white with the speckle of yellow onto there, which is going to disperse the weight, that heavy weight of that yellow, which is the primary colour. And by putting in the tulips, that's going to be a lovely interplay of form and shape. So if you give me a moment, I will just quickly get the flowers that we're going to use together, and we'll get on to the road to nearly finish. Loving it. Right, let's look at using iris wiring and inserting the irises and the freesias. To do the freesias, it's just a matter of snipping a stem a couple of centimetres long. I'm going to use the 24 gauge wire, and I'll check that out to make sure it is going to hold. It's just a matter of going through the base floret through to that where the next floret attaches onto that stem, bringing that down, and I'll just give that a wee twist and then testing it. Now see how it's done that? That is my indicator that that wire is not strong enough because it's not holding the flower. And as I said, by wiring, that gives me the ability to manipulate and to put the flower where I want it to be, because I'm sort of like playing God for just a little moment. Okay, that's not working, so I would rather just take that off now and go to a 22 gauge wire, press that through there. Now, because the stem's still quite strong, but I just know that by the time I start wiring that, what is going to happen is I am going to squish the fibres of its stem. So I'm just going to bring it through, bring it down, and then tape onto that like so. Pull it, twist it, and bind it down to the end. And then with the irises, there are two ways that you can wire these, and I'll show you the one that I prefer. Okay, when I go into here, get rid of that because I don't want that. I could cut that there using a wire, press the wire through there, and then bring that down and then bind that. But look how thick that is. What I would prefer to do is to take that off and that bulk off, and even though I've got a bulky bit down there, it's much better than those two bulky bits. I'm going to use a 22 gauge wire again. Now I'm just going to press it through there. Now I know that that's quite firm in there because as I inserted it, I could feel it. Bring that straight through and down to there. Now that is quite squishy, so I'm not going to twist it around. So just holding my hand and attaching the tape and then pulling, twisting, and bringing that down. Now that stem is a little bit white, there's a little bit of fluid coming out of that, so I'm going to dry that off because I know that this won't stick. Now it is a bit bulky there, it's definitely bulky, and I can feel more of that fluid coming out, which I don't want. Now bring that across loosely, and then when you've got it there and you've got that extra bit of tape that hasn't been fully extended out, then bring the tape down like so. And you'll know if it hasn't worked because what will happen is the tape will start to come away from there. Now that's that nice fine stem. Let me just put that there so that you can see it, as opposed to the thickness of that stem. I would prefer this as opposed to that because that's just a little bit too bulky for what I want to achieve. Right, we've done the freesias, so I'm just going to tape that now so that it's all done. And like as I said, I would prefer to have taped everything before I started, but I'm here to teach you how to do it. Right, from there, taking your bouquet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the freesias first. So they're just going to go in there. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've got this big white bulky tulip beside a yellow bulky tulip, and by putting that freesia in, I'm actually helping to diffuse the bulkiness of those with a nice fine textured flower. So, and this time, instead of going around like I've done with the others, like going from one side to the other, this time what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take those around the outside, and I just want to extend it ever so slightly out. And the other thing that will happen is, even though you can't really see it, but just imagine what I'm talking about here, what will happen is the eye hits that big yellow tulip there, but it also, and then sees this big white flower, but it also sees that little fine piece of freesia, and then it actually helps to float it into the centre. Right, another one can go into here like so, and then evenly distribute. I really love this type of construction. Now it is starting to get a little bit difficult for my placements in here, but I can still get my flowers, my wires down and through there. So it's just a matter of going in until you can find a little hole, and they are there. And if I could see properly, it would be so much easier. Taking that through to there, And I've got one more that I want to put down through there. And there is a little hole there. I know there is because I can feel it. So just push that into there like that. And if it's getting too difficult to go this way, just get your stem and then just pull it through until you have achieved a nice even base placement. Now getting your guide wire again, this time what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick that up into the posy and then just bring that wire around and firmly hold those stems together. And sometimes I've been known to be so strong I've broken that wire. Now getting rid of those bits of excess wire there now so that that's out of the road. Now I've kept one of those because I'm going to use that again. Okay, let's place these. So I'm going to take that into there, and because they're so big I think I can get away with only using 3. So to get an uneven number into what is an even design, the best way to do this is to place them like a triangle so that you've got equal distance between your placements. Now look how this is all starting to come together. So the bigger they are, the bigger the flowers, the less you're going to need. Now, didn't do it. I thought I was going to have a difficulty there with that big stem in there, but actually it's worked out quite nicely. Once those are in there, using the guide wire again and give that a really good tug, and I'll just cut those off as I go so that they are out of the road. So look how the posy's starting to come together, and by using, working from the base up, I'm actually, even though I've not got very much room in the centre, I've still got enough to go through. And the other thing I like to do now is to just have a check to make sure that everything is all neat underneath here, so, and that your nice base construction is still looking good. Okay, from there it is a matter of deciding, am I going to put daffodils into this bouquet, or am I going to select other flowers? Now the reason I say that is because daffodils can be quite difficult to work with, and any kind of marking they will bruise. So if the bride did want daffodils, what I suggest you do is to wait at this stage until you have your other flowers and then put it in. So when I look at my flowers, I now want to get to the good bit, which is the fragrance. So I've got some really beautiful Daphne. I've also got this beautiful hellebore, which will be absolutely fabulous. Now the reason I'm doing, before I go any further, I want to explain what's going on here with my colour selection. So I've got the yellow and the white, which are the flowers that we know as spring. The Pieris, when I look at that, has got the slight, ever so slight little tinge of a maroon, as does the colouring on the Freesia. So I've got a little titch here, I've got a little titch here. When I look into the Daphne, I've got the pinks with the deeper maroon, and then when I look into the hellebore or the winter rose, I've also got little bits of maroon. So if you're stuck wondering now what other colour can I put, that's when I mean by have a look at nature, because she is the best colourist in the world, and just follow what she's done and just pretty much use your eyes. Because look, there it is there, there's that maroon there, there it is there, and there it is with those. I'm loving it so far. Now the other thing that I have got is I've got these little blue matchsticks, and I've also got these lovely little violets, which are part of the blue family. So if blue is a primary colour, then the purple is just around on that colour wheel ever so slightly, which would come back into these colours. So see how beautifully they all match together. And the other thing that I have got here is I have got one hyacinth, and I've got these little white forget-me-nots, and I picked everything yesterday, and when I look at this, I think to myself, now why have you drooped? I don't know why it's drooped, but if it's going to droop, it's drooped at this stage. get rid of it. And I'm also just a little bit worried as to whether these are actually going to hold up in the bouquet. Now, I picked them yesterday afternoon. It's now 24 hours later. That has got a bit of a droop on. And I have to say to myself, now can I trust that? Can I really trust that to look pristine and perfect? And it's exactly the same with the daffodil. Can I really trust that that daffodil isn't going to become quite transparent, which is what they do as they open up. Now this is still looking quite good. No, it's not. When I look into that there, I can see that that is slowly becoming just a little bit transparent. That is my indicator that it's on the turn. So these are just little things that you need to just think about as you're going. So even though I would love to use that, I've just got a feeling that that is just going to go really limp on me. And even if, like as I said, I do the wedding, the bouquets the day before. If you're doing the bouquet the morning of the wedding, think about the duration of the service and how long you want the bouquet, or the bride won't be wanting something that's dead in 2 or 3 hours or on the wilt. So think about what you're using, and is it worth using, and is it better to just sacrificiously just put them away? So is that the right word? I don't know. But just put them to one side and think about it quite carefully. So I've decided that I don't want to risk it, so I'm just going to put those to side. And it's the same with the violets. Can I trust those violets? I think I can, because they're quite a hearty flower. So experience is going to tell you what is going to be good to use and what isn't. But I think I've got enough here. Now with this one hyacinth, I'm going to use that as my focal, and I'm thinking that that is going to go into there. Now because it's a round posy, I'm going to have to cut that so that the whole thing continues to be nice and rounded. Or if I use those, whatever I put in now, I'm going to have to think about, is that going to, I don't want a flat bit with like a little bit of a mountain in the middle. I need to have a little bit of a think about how I'm going to place my things. So go and have a cup of coffee, and I'll be back in a minute to get towards on the road to nearly finished. Okay, I've had a bit of a clean up and we're getting ready to go. Right, with the hellebore, the best way to wire those is, because it's such a fine structure, and I don't want that, I'm thinking that I'm going to need about a 24. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that wire up through to its little head, and I'm going to just bring that down like so. I'm not even going to twist that, because I know that that little head will come off. So once you get to there, it's exactly the same process. And when you're winding and binding, just be very careful that you don't go too fast and its little head falls off, because don't forget, I only had one of those. Right, with these here, these little matchsticks, they've got another name and it starts with M and I can't remember what it is. What I'm going to do with these is, now I know that they're going to droop, so, oopsie daisy, made a bit of a mess, but never mind, that will be okay for now. Right, with these, what I'm going to do, there's 2 ways that you can wire these. When I was doing my training, I used to have to take that off there, and we used to stick a wire very, very finely right up that little stem there so that it's set like that. Well, I do one now, and then I get the others. I bring them together like so, at all different lengths like that. Cut that surplus bit there off, like so. Get another fine wire and just, hold on, whoa, just a minute. I don't like doing this, I'm always scared. Take that around there like that, a loose hook, like so, so that you've got several wires on there. Then get your tape, because you've got to be careful that you don't break those little fine fibres, and then just bind everything down like that. If you need to, and you think that you're going to need to put a little bit of moss on them because they might droop, take that off there, get a little piece of cotton wool, like so, and then bind that around there to cover those the little cut stems, like so. In fact, I don't like to use these because I know that they're going to be a bit of a nuisance. And then with that wet cotton wool, you can then, oopsie daisy, I hate it when it does that. When it does that, just start again, as I said before, very gently. Just bring that tape down all the way. In fact, that's come off, but they've all stuck together onto that one wire, and bring that down like so, and then break it off so that you've got one wire and they're all stuck together. So that's one way. Now the other way with the violets is getting your violets like so, and they all grow at different lengths. Imagine trying to put those into a posy. Just won't work. Now, using the leaf that nature gave it, put that on one side, put the other on that side. Now, I'm not going to worry about that little one there just drooping down because that's how they grow. Cutting those all to the same length, getting a fine wire, taking that up there, and then gently just binding that down to there. If you need to moss it, do so by all means, but I just know that where I place these in my bouquet, they're going to be okay. Be very careful because they're little fine stems. Take that down like so. So that can just sit there, and I'm going to do exactly the same with these. And you're best to use more at this stage, and then I'm just going to wipe those off and then get two leaves that nature has given it, one up there, and then I'm going to take the other one down to there so that it's almost sitting on a little lily pad and the support on either side. Cut that across there and using that fine wire, and let me just tell you now that about now it's going to be very tricky getting these into the bouquet, but they are going to be the last flowers that go in to my bouquet with just a little bit of foliage. Wiring that all the way down to there. That can sit to there. I've made a mess, so I'll just wipe that up. Now, using this here, now do that when you get it. Take all the leaves off, and I'll show you that now. So here's this here, and it's got these leaves, these big leaves. They are so disgustingly not very nice. Normally I would pull the leaves off, but when you look into it, what you'll notice is there's little florets underneath it, and there's some on top of it, and that's just to hold them all together. What I do is I don't like a blunt cut, but for what I'm doing now to maintain as many leaves as I can. See how they're all starting to fall off? Well, I'll show you how to solve that in a minute. Just do that and get rid of anything that is going to drop off at this stage so that you don't have to worry about it. Now, I've got quite a big stem there. I don't want that bit there. That was an easy way of getting rid of dead stems. Very gently holding it like so. Take the wire up, bring the wire down on either side, and if anything falls off, it's going to fall off anyway. Just bind that around there like that. And I've got two here. Get rid of any of those little dead bits. And then I'm going to repeat it and have those about the same length. This is a big class, isn't it? Whew. There's a lot involved. So take that up to there, bring that down to there, and then very carefully just bend that around, then tape it. And I just want to get to the really exciting bit. So when you're taping this, sometimes you don't need to tape, and I think that so that I don't lose any more petals, I'm not going to do any more wiring. Now with this here, which is going to be the hyacinths, which is going to be my main flower, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look into here, and even though I've got to sacrifice just a few of those bottom florets, it comes up, and those bottom florets are the first things that die, so just take those off. Now this is a very squishy stem. Cut that straight across there, get my wire, turn that around like so, take the wire through and bring it down. Then get another wire, same gauge, take that through and bring it down, so that now you've got 2 wires. Then get your tape, because if you try to wire that, it's just going to go like this. You watch this. See that, how it's just gone all squishy like that? And that gooey substance that I talked about right at the beginning of the lesson, that's just going to go everywhere. And if anybody's going to, if that squishes near somebody who has any kind of sensitivity or allergies, that's going to be a real downer for a bride enjoying her day. So take those off there. And because I've got those double wires, well, I've actually got 4 wires, just gently take that around, and I'm not actually hardly pulling it at all. Go to there, bring it down, leave it a little bit wider, take that back up onto itself, take it a little bit further, and then you can start to be a bit sort of firmish with it. Now I don't want all of those 2 wires plus those little 4 prongs there going anywhere near that bouquet, because I'm running out of room and I need to have got rid of as much bulk as I can. Right, we are now on the road to being finished. This is the other thing that I wanted to tell you. Here it is. I'm just going to put that into there now, because I've already lost a floret's just fallen down. See how that's just all bending? Take that right back into there. Okay, we are nearly on the road to finish. Right, I've got 2 pieces of this. I'm going to bring that into there. Whoa, be very, very careful. Take that right into there, and then I'm going to repeat over to this side and just gently just nestle that down into there and nestle that into there, so that it's quite low, because we all know that those little florets are going to drop and fall. So push those down and into the bouquet, and that's actually going to be to give the lovely fragrance. I'm now going to put a little bunch of violets down underneath, and I can't see where I'm going. Yes, I can. So put those down, nestle those right down into there, because I know that that's going to support them. And when they grow, when you see them, they actually do hide underneath the leaves. And I can remember as a little baby junior going and picking violets and almost making myself go a little bit crazy. Hold on, just need to do that, because I've got to get this down into here. There we go. Take that down, and then being very, very careful as I place those. Where did my stem go? There it is. Get my bit of wire. Oops, I've lost my wire. There it is. Take that down into there so that they're nicely hidden. I've got the little matchsticks, so I'm just going to take those and put those into the center. Honest to goodness, this fine wire is very, very, very hard to deal with, but I'm going to win. And you need to be very gentle in here, because we don't want to disturb or to ruin anything. There we go. Found that little hole. Take those down like so, and then I'll put my hand underneath that to pull that wire. I've got a couple of hellebore, so I'm going to put one into there. And this is where you can take. Now, and don't forget that we want that to be facing the right way. So I'm just going to put that into there. And this is going to take that formality of one to the left, one to the right, one to the side, one to the other side, so that it becomes a little bit more natural. I've got another space there, so I'm going to put that into there. And this is pretty much just like the painting by numbers or doing a jigsaw puzzle and getting the wee bits to all fit in. take that down into there, have that facing up the right way, and I've got that little bud, so I'm just going to bring that little bud in and over to there. There's a lot of work in making one of these. This is why you can charge a small fortune for making these. Okay, so that's into there, that's into there, that's into there, and then my last placement is my focal flower. So I'm just going to bend that out there, and because this is the most delicate, this is going to go in now, and I have to be so careful because, as we said right at the beginning, the irises are like, oh my goodness, they are almost like butterfly wings, so that can go into there. And then if I wanted to, I could add another freesia, or I could put some more flowers into there. But about now, I think that there's absolutely enough in there. If you wanted to add a little bit more foliage into the top, then that could go in there now. But to be perfectly honest, I think that there's absolutely enough going on in there. Get a guide wire, and that's the other thing, knowing when to actually finish off. So I'm just going to pull that around there like so, bring that down like that. Now, for cutting the end of the stem, the rule of thumb is, well, what I was taught is when it's up in your hand, a good couple of centimetres, you don't want this to be too long and you don't want it to be short. I've seen these where they've been cut about there, and it just means that the balance in the hand isn't enough. I'm just going to take possibly another couple of centimetres off there. Yeah, that's about the right length for me. So, and that fits nicely into my hand. The next thing to now do is to get your tape and to gently twist and bind all of those stems together. Now, the other thing I need you to know is that I've got a lot of material in there, but I've got a really beautiful, fine, but firm and well balanced, take this right down, it needs to go, well balanced, beautiful bouquet that should actually feel like, I'm just going to cut that bit off, should feel like a champagne flute, and you can hold one of those all night because I've seen people, I've observed people doing it. So there we have a completed bouquet, and if there are any little holes in there that you can see that you want to fill, then you could do that by just putting in, like if there are holes at this stage, this is when you can start adding an extra texture with your greenery. So I'm just going to put that in now and see just what that looks like. Oh yes, look at that. That looks gorgeous. And then that's down to there, and because I've got that one bit into there, I might even like to add another little bit of Pieris, or I might like to just put in a little bit more foliage. But for now, I think that that's all that needs. So little rule, when in doubt, leave it out. If you're not sure, leave it out, or do a little test run to see what it's like. Right, that is almost the end of our lesson, and before we move on, I want to show you how to finish it off, but we'll have a wee spell for a minute because I've talked for far too long. See you in a minute. Okay, we're up to finishing and we're on the home straight, which is fantastic. Right, to do a nice, easy finish, what I do is I get a couple of meters of, I think this is about 6-inch wide tulle in whatever color you want. And what I do is I turn it over a good third, get a fine piece of wire and just gather that up all the way along until you reach the end. So just gather that along until you reach the end, which is what I've done here. It's like, remember those, well, you might not remember, but when I was a child, you used to get these round, fluffy things of net that you used to clean the bath. Now, the bit that's folded over is going to go closest to the hand, and the big flat bit is going to go close to the bouquet. So twirl that, so just bend that in half, evenly distribute the weight of the tulle and bring your two bits of wire down to the same length. As I said, the roughly bit, the shorter roughly bit is going to go closest to away from the bouquet. So get your bouquet with your stem all covered, bring that across to there like so, and now I've got to use my teeth for a minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie those two ends together. One moment. And tie that as tight as you can. You might need to, and take it up as high as you can into that bouquet so that there is no space at all. And what that's going to do is to add a lovely little collar to just a protection between the last leaf and where the handle starts, and it's just a nice little wee finish. And then just make sure that those bits there are well bound off. Cut that off and then push that wire into there, and then just go around and then make sure that that's all nice and neat and is sitting flat. Then get another piece of tulle about the same length, take that up to there, bring it down like this, and then it's just a matter of, oops, without that getting all hunky, I'm doing this quite quickly, but we'll be able to, I'll show you another day other methods of finishing it. Just get that like so and into a nice wad, and then just take that up and around. This needs to be done neater, but I'm just about out of time, and I'm sure you are sick and tired of listening to me. And then just holding it upside down. Be careful at this stage that you don't drop it. Take that up through there from the top down, and then back up to the top, pulling that firmly so that that doesn't come off, coming up to the other end. Teeth again, one moment, making sure that one goes one way. Oops, that needs to go right around there like so. And then teeth again. And normally I've got somebody else to help me do that. So that just finishes that off. And if you need to bend anything down, you can still do that. But that handle is very, very untidy, but I had to go really fast. So that's a really lovely way of finishing it off. And if you wanted to, you could perhaps embellish it with a beautiful little jewel, but make sure that you check with the bride to make sure what accessories she has, so that whatever jewel you put on is going to enhance and not detract from her overall theme. So there you have, big lesson, sorry about that, a really lovely, easy way of doing a bouquet using spring flowers. And there was just one more thing I wanted to share with you. Flowers take up moisture not only via their stems, but also through their petals. But because these are spring flowers, they do not need to have too much water on them, because it can make the little petals rot or become transparent. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. Sorry it was a lot of talk, but there was a lot involved, and I've done this for you in real time. So lots and lots of practice. Any questions, please Gmail me to astarsplace@gmail, and I will try and help where possible. And if you're really stuck, you can send me an email, and I could Skype you and help you out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being so patient. I hope I've been of assistance, and I will see you all another day.